me permission to share my screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I just started the recording. So let me go back here to. Did that work, Stephanie? You should be a co-host, so you should be sharing it.
Yep, there we go.
Okay, and for those who just joined, we are recording this, and it should be recording now.
Okay, let me get to my slideshow from current slide. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone, educators, birth to 5, Deschutes County. I was really wearing my parent hat when I put this together, but that's awesome. I can adjust. So a little bit about me. I am an Oregon behavior professional. I work Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties. I have worked the entire state of Oregon at one time or another as well doing, I work in family homes and foster homes. I've also worked with agency group homes doing behavior support, but I'm also a parent of now 17-year-old that experiences disability. And I'm also a foster provider of a young man that experiences disability. So I have, that, this is awesome because I can tell all of my birth to 5 stories about my daughter. So that makes me happy. Okay, so what we're going to get at it today is, and for some of you, this might be, a little bit of 101, but please, put your questions in the chat. Let me know if you want to dive a little bit deeper into stuff. This is how I do my work. This is when I'm working with families, I'm really helping them to really be the behavior specialist for their own child. And so I'm trying to work myself out of a job. That's my goal. That families are equipped and empowered to understand these concepts, know what the resources are, have those natural and paid supports, flowing, and I can move on to the next thing. So, what I do is called positive behavior support, and positive behavior support is something that just it's not just like, oh, let's put positive in front of behavior support and we all feel good. Like, it's something that has been studied and researched. University of Oregon has actually done a lot of really great work around positive behavior support. For me personally, again, because I'm working, in the community within family homes, what's really important to me is meeting people where they're at. And adapting and individualizing those supports so they work for that family and for the people that are implementing those supports. So for me, positive behavior support is everyone is getting their needs met and the plan works for everyone. And if it doesn't, then we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with some different ideas. So why do kids use challenging behavior? And that really, you can't develop strategies until you understand the why. And that's one of the things that I see with families in particular, is they're solving the problem before they understand the problem. And I'm always like, that's awesome, that's probably a good idea, but let's go back to the why, to make sure that we're really targeting what need is being met by this challenging behavior. So one need that's being met is that it works. The need is met. I get what I need and want with this challenging behavior. Challenging behavior might be the best skill that this child has to meet that need right now. So another, flip is like, oh wait, challenging behavior is a skill. And our approach is going to be a little bit different if we're really viewing it through that lens of that a challenging behavior is a skill versus, something that is a problem. The need is not the problem. It is we're trying to understand the need so we can solve the true problem. So another need met by a challenging behavior is that it works because it's a great way to avoid things that are hard, scary, and embarrassing. So this, child here, they might be, again, it's not like, oh, let me use this challenging behavior to get this need met. This is all, things that are not always happening within the child's awareness that they're doing, especially in those younger years. So, from the perspective of the child, this thing right in front of me is very hard, scary, or embarrassing, and I don't want to do it. And I would rather be in trouble than do this thing right in front of me. And one of the things that we might do as adults is we might say things like, it's no big deal. But even if it's something that we've seen that child do before, we know that they have the capacity to do it, they have the skills to do it. From their perspective, it is too much for them, and they are willing to get in trouble to avoid that. Sometimes that is the goal. That challenging behavior is, oh, when I'm in trouble, I get to go to this space away from expectations. It's a way to avoid maybe a task or an expectation. It's how do you get a quiet space? It's how you get a break. Or it's how you get the right person to come to you and help you not feel that this is as hard, scary, or embarrassing. So, avoiding or escaping can also be a sign that the child doesn't have enough information about what's expected. So here we have, two kids. The young man is provoking her, and again, if his behavior was talking, he would be like, whatever it takes to get her to look at me. So he's trying to gain her attention. And from her perspective, she's like, why is he picking on me? Why is he in my face? And I'm going to express my anger because that feels right in this moment. So when we're looking at situations like this, one thing I like to do is break down attention-seeking behavior into its finer points, because I think when we hear they're just doing it for attention, it triggers kind of a negative feeling. So if we change how we look at attention to they're looking for an interaction, they're looking for help, reassurance, comfort. In this case, he wants an audience. He wants her looking at him. Information, advocacy. So let's break attention down into those smaller pieces, because then we're really addressing what the need is, versus they're just doing it for attention. Because often the recommendation when someone is doing it for attention is to ignore the behavior. But again, that could be what we need to do, but until we really understand better what's going on and what that need is, that could actually be making it worse, to ignore the behavior. So, when we're, looking at a scenario where we have two youth kind of getting into it, one of the other things that I usually recommend is usually we go to the instigator first. And I try to flip that. Let's actually go to the person who's being targeted first, and help that person kind of keep their positive identity. I mean, it might be our best guess about, who's the instigator and who's being targeted, but going to that child who's being targeted and say, hey, are you okay? How about you, we get you set up over here. And then you go to the child who's instigating, because it can be very frustrating. I remember when my daughter was in middle school, and there were kids who were, throwing chairs and doing other things to get their needs met in the classroom. And I remember my daughter saying, why do I even try? Because those kids, get all the attention. And so I think flipping that, where we're going, to the person who's being targeted first, and then going to the instigator, and we're meeting both of their needs, but I think it helps restore the positive identity of the child being targeted to be the one that we go to first. If there's a safety issue, we're going to go where we need to address the safety issue. So safety is a different, adds a different component to that. So let's see, I'm looking at my notes. Hold on. Yep, I think we're good there. Okay. So we also might see situations where there's bullying happening. I mean, I know this happens online and also in person. And, I know that we're not in classrooms as much now. So this is a little bit different. But if we're looking again that the needs met by the behavior, we might have some different components happening. So we have, one child who there might be some things going on in their life and they use bullying others to help them feel in control. We might have a youth that is like, I don't want to be on the receiving end of this, so I'm going to go along with it to be a part, to be a part of something, to belong. And then we might have, again, the child who's being targeted, and they may engage in challenging behavior because they want the bullying to stop and they want it to stop now. And often what I see, especially for kids that experience disability, is we have, these kids here who are pretty good at hiding what they're doing. And then this, child here who's being bullied is the one that's going to have that huge outburst in class or do something big. And they're going to be the one who actually gets in trouble when we're not looking at what could actually be driving that. And all this youth wants this bullying to stop, and they're again willing to be in trouble to not have to go through this. So looking at those components as well. And then, behavior is communication. Screaming and running off are my most effective forms of communication. Being in trouble is worth it if I get the help that I need. So, I do find that communicating a need of some kind is one of the number one reasons why challenging behavior occurs. If I'm running away, typically, ideally, the right person to help me is following me and is going to help me, kind of resolve this situation. It's, or it could be a way to avoid, it could be a way to gain, it could be meeting different communication needs. But that behavior is, again, I would rather be in trouble than feel these feelings. I'd rather be, and also with emotion regulation, executive functioning, and all of those things. Again, this might be the first skill that the child uses to get a need met because they still need to learn a skill that is going to help get that need met in a more effective way. And the tricky part for us in providing support is, sometimes I will, I was at a meeting with, an IEP meeting, and one of the teachers was saying, well, when she's doing this, we ask her to use her words. And I said, that's awesome. What are the words? And they couldn't answer the question. So I was like, so if you say use your words, but you don't know what the words are, then you're not teaching the words. So that's what we then spend our time doing, is like, I think that's a great strategy that we want that child to use words to communicate. But let's figure out what those words are so we can actually teach those and reinforce those. And then, another, kids live up to their expectations. I am defined as a troubled kid, so why not, just be that label? And so that's, some kids really own that. Like that might be, again, I'm the bad kid, and so I might as well be bad. And that is the need being met. It's like, this is who I identify as. I've also seen kids who maybe their disability label is something that they might, they engage in a challenging behavior and they say, well, it's because I have ADHD. And, usually what I, say is like, hey, that's not who you are. Let's talk about what happened. Like you are not ADHD. ADHD is something that impacts you, but is not what happened right now, what's right in front of us. And then, working on helping those positive labels. I was, this is another experience I had in a classroom. I was volunteering in the behavior classroom in my daughter's school when she was young. And just right there, the behavior classroom, right? And these kids knew that they were behavior kids, and people in the building called them the behavior kids. And that was like, a whole problem right there that just needed to be resolved. So those kids were wearing that label, and of course they're in a separate part of the building. So there was one young man who really didn't want to have anything to do with me, and I honored that. I would kind of try to help him out, and he would tell me to get out of his face, and I'd be like, all right, I can follow instructions. So, but one day the teacher asked me to take a small group of kids to get to do their eye tests. And so, I said to him when we were leaving the portable, I said, hey, be sure and run to the door. And then walk as soon as you get in. So it was like, they're like, oh, yay, we got permission to run. So I kind of gave them like, information about, like, I knew that they were going to run in the hallways. So I was like, hey, run here, but don't run here. And they totally, walked to the eye exam place. But the one young man who wouldn't have anything to do with me, he went up and was kind of mimicking the people doing the eye test, and they didn't seem annoyed by it. He seemed really happy. So I had no reason to interrupt what he was doing. It wasn't disrupting anything. And so then when we walked back, I said, hey, you have a future in optometry. And he's like, what's that? And I explained, all the professions that you can have around making glasses or checking people's eyes. And he just became more and more engaged. And then when we came to the classroom, he runs up to his teacher and he's like, tell him what you said. Tell him what you said. And I was like, oh, we got a future, optometrist here. And you could just see him like beaming with pride that somebody had like dreamed a future, for the behavior kid in the behavior classroom. So I think those, as much as we can help with those positive labels, and then make sure that we're not the ones actually labeling, the kids within the settings that they're in. If they get experience disability or other differences where they need support, those are attributes, those are part of who they are, but they're not, or they're part of what impacts them, but it's not who they are. And making sure that we're helping with that shift, because that could be a contributor to the challenging behavior. So when we're looking at challenging behavior, we need to be, when I sit down with a family, I say, they say, well, they had a meltdown. And a meltdown to one person could be, stomping your foot and crossing your arms. A meltdown to another person could be destroying the home and the police being called. So I say, tell me what that looks like. If I were here when it was happening, what would I see happening around me? And so I'm asking questions about, what that challenging behavior looks like when it's happening, because that can give me clues, and it helps give me the right questions to ask too. Like, who is this more likely to happen with? When is this most likely to happen? What parts of the house is this happen more likely in the community? And it really helps me to narrow it down. The other thing that I coach parents to do is when, they're getting information from, the school or babysitters or, other people who are caring for their kids, when they say they had a meltdown, to say, oh, tell me what that looked like. So they're also, getting the right information to be able to share with someone like me, or maybe a therapist or someone else working with the child, because that can give us a lot of clues, especially maybe if something is a medical issue. And that's one of the number one things I try to rule out is, if we're seeing a challenging behavior, I'll be like, could they be in pain? Could they, could it be dental? Could it be sensory? So I'm trying to, because those those needs we might need to address in a, again, with, in a medical or occupational therapy, setting. Um, and nothing that we can do from a behavioral perspective is really going to work if it's something that where the child's not feeling right inside their body or they're having dental pain. So that what does that look like can help us ask the right questions. The other thing I look at are behavior chains. So, if it starts with maybe walking away, profanity, and then maybe knocking some stuff over and then targeting someone and it starts to build, that's really helpful information for me because I'm not looking at each individual behavior. I'm looking at this as one big behavior that starts with this early warning sign. There's usually something that we see that builds up to that bigger piece. And that's really helpful information because in a behavior chain, we want to actually apply a strategy that works to decrease the behavior by looking at the first behavior. So if that first behavior is, yelling and screaming, and it can lead all the way up to, destroying a room and property, I'm not as focused on the property destruction as I am on the yelling and the screaming, because that's what we need to interrupt, because then the chain doesn't get to its highest level. So that's the other thing I'm asking about when I'm asking this question is, so if some behaviors just again, all behavior happens for a reason. There's always something either internal or external that triggers it, but we might not always see it. But we're trying to, again, some behaviors just happen in isolation. Like you're just fine and all of a sudden you're hitting somebody. So that's going to be, we'd be addressing that in a different way. But those behavior chains, we're just looking at the beginning of that chain to try to interrupt it. And then we would have, again, supports in place for if the chain extended beyond that first behavior. So there are, on the next slide, we're going to look at some of those things that we can't see. So here's our, iceberg metaphor, which everybody loves. And so as we know about the iceberg, there's more going on below the surface than there is above the surface. So that challenging behavior that we see is just the tip of the iceberg. That is just what we see, but there are many other factors that might be contributing to that. Again, this is, a long, I'm not going to go over each of these, but as you can see, age, one of the things I like to think about with age too is, I don't like to say, oh, this child is 5, but they, act like they're 18 months old, because I prefer to think of it as, we're just going to think younger for this child, versus we do want to age the behavior, but we don't want to give again, that could be a negative label that we could be putting on a child. So, I'll say to parents, especially around emotion regulation, so this child is 10, but we have to think younger when we are responding to their challenging behavior. So we would prefer that they use 10-year-old skills, but we have to kind of meet them where they're at and help grow those skills closer to their chronological age is how I frame it. For families that I'm supporting in terms of the difference between chronological age and developmental age, to look at those and around building skills as well. We gotta meet people where they're at to help kind of move forward. So and I'll come back to kind of where these underlying factors fit in when we look at the behavior pathway. So, how to do positive behavior support. This is what I teach families how to do. When I do functional behavioral assessments, they're like, 15 pages long, and they have all, this lots of words in them. But really, you could you can figure this out on one piece of paper. When you're, especially if it's your child or it's a child that you work with that you know pretty well. So the first step is we're going to understand what need the challenging behavior is meeting. And it's okay to make some educated guesses. And sometimes that that might be all we have. A guess is still a starting point. So that is, we're not going to do any harm if we make a guess that this challenging behavior meets the need of communicating a need for help. And then we start working on that as a goal and a skill. Because, well, we've taught that child how to ask for help. The behavior is still there. So we have to go back to the drawing board, but hey, we've taught a skill. So we're not going to do any harm by making some guesses about what need the behavior meets. And then we're going to look at a replacement behavior. We're going to consider how this need can be met differently. Again, meeting the child where they're at. And I like to break it out into like kind of there's a step 1 skill and a step 2 skill. So let's say the challenging behavior meets the need of getting everyone to drop everything and hurry. So so waiting is the trigger. This child doesn't like to wait. As soon as they escalate, we quickly, get to them to decrease the behavior. So yes, learning to wait is a valuable skill. But first we have to teach this child to communicate that they want us to hurry. So that's usually where I start, because teaching them how to wait is a valuable skill, but first we have to teach them to let us know that they don't like waiting, that they want us to hurry. And then we say, oh, thank you for letting me know that you want me to hurry. Okay, I'm going to hurry. Thank you so much for telling me. And then eventually the step 2 skill is we teach that child to learn how to wait. So I usually like to break things out into a step 1 and a step 2 skill, because sometimes that step 2 skill is it's too frustrating, for that child, because they don't have the skills yet to let you know they're annoyed by you and they want you to hurry. So when we're looking at that replacement behavior, it needs to be as fast, if not faster and more efficient than the challenging behavior is, because that challenging behavior is a skill. So if we are, again, teaching a skill to meet that need differently, it has to be like fast. So if they don't like waiting, they want us to hurry. As soon as they say, can you please hurry? We say, thank you so much for letting me know that's what you need. Yep, I'm going to hurry. So we have to be fast and efficient with it. And then after we've practiced that for a while, we've built some trust and rapport, then that's when we can say, thank you for letting me know. I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes, because that's about how much time I need. So that's how long, you'll wait. You're awesome. You know how to wait, you're learning skills. So we could start to build scaffold that skill from that first skill that's faster and more efficient than the challenging behavior. But again, that is, if we try to, if we stop reinforcing the skill, or we change what we're doing before that child is ready, they will go right back to that challenging behavior, because it gets that need met faster and more efficiently than the skill. And then we have to choose a support strategy that works for everyone. So if there is one person in that environment that is unable or unwilling to do this, then it's probably not going to work. So it's really important to get everybody on the same page. And it's not uncommon that I'm working with families, and I'm not writing the plan that, like, the child has incredible capacity, and if we could really be doing a lot, but we might just be writing a plan for the people in the environment that are implementing the plan, and meeting them where they're at, not necessarily the child where they're at. But then same thing, it's, once a family or foster provider, whoever I'm working with, has that positive experience of, hey, this is working, then, same thing, I'm able to kind of increase their skills too. in terms of how to respond to that challenging behavior. So this is the tool that I use to put all of this together, the behavior pathway. I'm going to check my time. Okay, I'm doing good. So what I do is, again, I write 15-page reports that all could really just be on one piece of paper, but I have to follow all my rules. So what I first do again is I look at that challenging behavior. So when I sit down and interview, I'm like, okay, what does this look like? What is the challenging behavior? And how I define that is, anything the child does that could be unsafe, harmful, or that can affect their ability to participate in meaningful activities. And if it's things that other people find, annoying or disrespectful, but they're not unsafe, harmful, and don't affect their ability to be included, we're still going to talk about it, but it might be more about us changing our behavior and our responses. But when I'm looking at a challenging behavior, again, behavior is, we're all having behaviors right now shifting from, one butt cheek to the other, or, checking our phone, or, we're all engaging in non-challenging behaviors all the time. It's the challenging behavior that limits this child's ability to, again, it could hurt others. It limits their ability to be included, that we want to look at. So then I go over here. This is that iceberg. What impacts the child? These are those underlying factors. And since, most of, like, everybody here, I believe, is educators, you might not have, you might only have some information about what those underlying factors are, which can be pretty challenging. But you can, it's okay to make some guesses about some of those factors, as long as we're, again, using that in the context of figuring out what need is met by that behavior, so we can figure out what skills to teach. So, any of these things, here could be underlying factors. I use, my daughter as an example. When she was pretty young, she was always, she was the kid, like, that she would kind of pair herself up with, like, kind of a leader kid. And so, like, she had this, friend Anna, who was like the one that everybody looked to Anna for, what are we doing on the playground today? She was the leader kid. And then, my daughter was more of like, look to the leader kid for information. She's very, very shy. And, just not one to put herself out there. And so one day it was really, really, really cold. And, there was a church near where we lived, and, there were folks that would, sleep in the church alcove, and, I would, talk to her about our, our neighbors, that, we need to, everybody should have a home, and, like, we would bring food and stuff. And one day she said to me, and it's bitterly cold, and she said, I think that everybody should have a house. And I was very proud. And I said to her, I'm like, who really likes to hear what kids think? The president. You should write a letter to the president. And she just screams, throws what she's holding, runs to her room, slams the door, and I can hear her in there crying. And so you're just like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. What happened? We already had a routine at that point where whenever that would happen, I would give her, a good 5 minutes. I would come in with a glass of water. She would drink some water. We would breathe together. And then I would say, what happened? And she said, I'm too shy to write the president. So, looking like, so my daughter, what impacted her and what kind of led to that behavior was the fact that she is a shy person, and the trigger was me suggesting that she do something that she felt was outside of her comfort zone. So those factors of kind of who your child's personality, their strengths, their interests. It could also be how they're impacted by differences, disability, if they've experienced, trauma, medical needs, any of that stuff are also factors. Medication side effects, communication would be all things that we would look at when we're looking at this challenging behavior and we're considering what might be part of that landscape of the behavior. So then setting events are more environmental. These are things in the environment that could be causing stress and overwhelming the behavior, and they set up the behavior. They don't necessarily set it off, but something in the environment could easily set off that behavior. Then these can be internal or external things that might trigger that behavior. For, in your, psychology 101, would be your antecedent. So your antecedent behavior consequence. I just kind of give it some different labels. So then what I look at, so after I've gathered, what does the behavior look like? Tell me a little bit about your child. When is this behavior most likely to happen? What environments? Who's in the environment? What's happening? What time of day? Okay, tell me what happened just before you saw that behavior. Or what do you guess might have been driving that? Because these could also be thoughts, feelings, etc. Then I start asking these questions over here. So, I say, so when that behavior happens, first I ask, how does everyone respond? How does the environment change? And I ask this question very gently because sometimes that, can feel like a judgment question for folks. So I kind of front load that with like, no judgment. If you have to, give in to that behavior, that is a tool that you need right now. I'm not going to take that tool away from you. But for me to be able to help you, I just need to kind of know, if they, threaten to destroy the room, if you don't, let them, keep playing on the Xbox, and you say, okay, fine, I'm not judging you. Like, that's what you need to do right now because you need more tools. So I'll have that conversation pretty gently about, how does grandma respond? How does the siblings respond? How do, peers respond? We might change the environment, and we might not even realize that we're walking on eggshells. So I try to kind of bring those eggshells that we might walk on more into your awareness when I'm asking this question. Do you dim the lights? Do you turn down the noise? Do you, redirect them to their room and say, let's make a tent for you to get in? What are you doing in response to that behavior? Because that is good information for us to know what need is being met by that behavior. And then that's when we start making our guesses. So the child is gaining and or avoiding something from this behavior. We're going to use all this information to make our best guess, our hypothesis. We'll be scientists about it. And, let's say we determine, a really easy one is, I escalate, you let me, you let me keep playing video games. Okay, the need being met is you want to play video games for longer. So let's work on our replacement skill for that. So what we do, and this is where I break again, step 1, step 2, the child who's demanding, tablet time, video game time, a valuable skill is to learn to, break that up and not be doing that all day, right? But the step 1 skill is just to be able to ask for more time. So that's usually how I'll start it out. Okay, so when, we're going to begin front load with lots of structure and schedules, and we're going to do all our preventative stuff that helps us to make that transition for that child better. But when the trigger is, hey, it's time to put the, the tablet away is the trigger, then this is when we might start, we would teach that skill, that replacement skill of asking for more time. So when, this child, when we're going to say, hey, it's going to be, we might give a choice. Do you want 5 minutes or 10 minutes of tablet time before we, go back to, school? And, ideally they make a choice. They might say, they might refuse that. That's fine. We've tried, we've given a choice. And then we might add that skill there, say, hey, it sounds like you might want more time. How much more time do you want? And again, working on the skill of asking for more time. And then at the same time, we're working on teaching, you know, sometimes, you know, we need to put stuff away, but it will still be there. We have a schedule, you know, when your tablet time starts back up again, all that good stuff. So it's a big picture of different supports, but that replacement skill is meeting the need that the behavior meets. So because we're trying to decrease this behavior. So we're creating that workaround. So you said no, I don't like no. And typically when you say no, I escalate, and I may or may not get my need met by that. It might just be emotion regulation. But now what I'm working on is a skill that will help me get what that behavior originally got me. And then at the same time, I'm going to be learning other skills in relation to that behavior to learn, you know, moderation skills and all that good stuff. So, common needs that challenging behavior meets are to communicate a message. You know, you often hear behaviors communication, so that is often true. I need help, I need reassurance, I need the right person, I need something to eat. Various messages that might be communicated. Again, the challenging behavior is the most reliable skill. A young person I'm working with right now, he will go after the animals in the home. And when I was watching this behavior happen, you know, like he would start to kind of stalk the animals in the home, and the mom would become much more helpful and communicative and say, what do you need? You know, and so I was like, oh, hey, he needs help. And he has learned that how he gets your help is to go after the animals. So we've just been working, you know, pretty, you know, straightforward. You know, like as soon as he starts, you know, walking towards the animals, mom says, hey, looks like you could use some help. And then he'll come over and she say, I need help. And he says, I need help. And she says, okay. And so we're hoping that will decrease the behavior of stalking the animals and scaring them. So he just needed to be taught a better way to communicate that message. And we're watching it and hoping that it works. It could be to meet a medical or a sensory need. That challenging behavior is, you know, again, the best skill that child has to let you know something hurts, or maybe, you know, they have dental pain, but they're, you know, maybe hitting their ear. And because that helps distract the pain, or, you know, or their sensory needs are, you know, jumping off the furniture, jumping off the roof of the house, various things because they have a sensory need. So we're going to again teach that skill of how do I communicate this need in a different way. Gaining that, you know, again, attention that we're going to label, you know, more accurately, like assistance, interaction, control, information. Or to escape fear, frustration, difficult tasks or environments. So some common replacement skills is asking for a break or being able to say I'm done, being able to get access to a calming space, being able to communicate help or other basic needs, being able to show an adult what they need, hungry, tired, thirsty, pain, sensory. And again, helping that child there might be other work that we have to do if they act on a need that they don't necessarily recognize that they have. So we might have to be teaching that child what that need is too. Reducing confusion is another replacement skill. Providing some kind of stress relief, teaching emotion regulation skills that we might join in, help them feel reassured, safe, and, you know, being able, you know, to practice skills to feel in control as well. So, you know, it's like whenever I work with a kid who's super motivated, it's so exciting because they may be engaging in incredibly challenging behavior, but I want to be more independent. I want to be trusted. I want, you know, to be able to do what my brother does. And it's not fair that he can do that, but I can't. And so I'm like, all right, let's work with that. Like you want, trust and independence. And so let's come up with a plan for you to be able to practice these skills and have more control. Um, so you, depending on, again, meeting the child where they're at, and working with a young man right now who he has the capacity to use photos and line drawings, but it's just really not the right, like it's not working for him as well as objects do. So even though he has the capacity for these other ways of communicating and understanding information, me and the teacher are working on an object schedule for him because that's just going to meet him where he's at right now. Again, and we're working on a replacement behavior and using those objects instead. But again, pictures, gestures, words, you know, using the full array of communication that is available to help that child express a need and receive information as well, so we can work on those replacement skills. How am I doing on time? I'm doing good. So this is so I'm actually kind of at the Q&A part. So if folks have questions, and then if anyone would like to unmute themselves and maybe ask about someone that they support or someone they have in mind, I'd be happy to give a demonstration of how to use this behavior pathway.
This is Callie again, and if you guys can maybe type in the chat if you want that to be you. I think I have to manually go in and unmute you, and you have to unmute yourself. So make sure you indicate in the chat so I can go and mute you.
And also, because you're all Deschutes County, if anybody even just has questions about what an Oregon behavior professional does and what I do with families, I would be happy to answer any of those questions too. Is it crickets?
It's crickets. But I'm happy to be your example, Steph, if you want to run through an example.
All right, here we go. Hold on, let me get my new screen up here.
Oh, we do have a question. So before we start that,
okay.
I've got a question. Can you see the chat at all, Steph? Because it says, what is the best approach to get many staff members on board when trying to make behavior changes? Ooh, good question.
Ooh, okay, good question. So, and this drawing from my experience of working in a children's group home, is, one of the things that I did was, first I came up with like a really clear description of the challenging behavior that we were working on, because I would have some people that would, oh, this is no big deal. And some people that were like, like having anxiety attacks over the behavior. So I would, really like helping everybody get on the same page about, what are we working on and what do these behavior look like? And when we're taking data on these behavior, this is what we mean. So we got really clear on what the behavior looked like. And then I would make sure, like, because everybody there had really good ideas too. And so I would treat them all like they were the experts. Because they were, not even as a strategy. Like, you guys, I am the consultant. You guys are here every day doing this. So you actually have the best information. So I would use this behavior pathway to, we would talk about scenarios together, and I would get everybody's input about, what happened, how did everyone respond, and made sure that people felt like even when they made a mistake that, hey, we're all learning. And even when we mess up, it's really good information, because we can use that and build better strategies. So that that was helpful in that setting. And then I would again sit down with, this behavior pathway. One time, one of my favorite stories was I was sitting down with 3 staff who had all been a part of the same situation, and same, so I was like, okay, what happened? We talked about the challenging behavior. And so what happened was, this young man, he engaged in major property destruction. Back up over here, he's a young man, he's a teenager, he's a boy with autism. He's living in a group home, which is, so, he'd rather be living with his family. This behavior has been reinforced for his entire life that he can escalate to this point and get what he wants. So then we looked at the setting that he was in. Another underlying condition is that he hated one of his housemates, did not like him at all. They would get along sometimes. So the setting that he's in, it's this young man and his housemate, and his housemate is listening to music on like a phone with no headphones. And so he was, saying, shut that off. And he was, name calling and insulting the other kid. And so the staff person said, he has a right to be here just like you. And that was the trigger that set off this huge, challenging behavior. And in response to that behavior, the staff removed the target child. And they started kind of, securing the environment, decreasing stimulation, and then supporting this, young man. But ultimately what he got was he didn't have to hear this music anymore from his housemate. And this housemate that he doesn't like very much is now no longer in the room, and he has one-to-one attention from staff. So when I sat down with the staff and we're talking through the behavior, and he said, I said, okay, what would you rather him do instead of to avoid his housemate? Or have that music turned off? And the staff person said, well, he could just ask. And I said, but he did. And you said, I said this nicely, you engaged in a power struggle. You said he has a right to be here just like you. And he's like, oh my goodness. I'm like, hey, no, like we're learning here, right? So I was like, so if the replacement behavior is, I want him to ask, well, he did. So what we're going to do, we know that he knows how to ask, but he doesn't know how to ask politely. So the step 1 skill we're going to work on is when he says, he starts name calling and bullying his housemate because he doesn't like his housemate being there, we're going to say, hey, do you need some space from your housemate? And he'll probably say to that staff person, yeah, you nitwit. So, and so I train the staff to understand, like, we're going to accept rude asks right now to build that relationship, to get the need met. And then as rapport is built, we're going to say, hey, I'm noticing that you're getting stressed out about your housemate. Remember, you can ask and I will redirect him to somewhere else. So we'll start to get that more polite ask online. And so in terms of like your question of getting everybody on the same page, I find that, hey, here's what we're going to do right now. But the big goal is that this, person is learning how to ask nicely, how to wait, how to do this, that, and that. But we have to get there. We have to first we have to reinforce skills that we might not be comfortable reinforcing to get to that point.
We have another question, Stephanie. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. So in a preschool setting, what advice do you have if families are not ready to accept any intervention, yet their behaviors impact the classroom?
Oh, man. Because my daughter was, I was already doing this work when my daughter was diagnosed at 3.5, and I was so in denial. I can just remember that, like, she's just a late bloomer. I remember I almost canceled her early intervention appointment because I was like, oh, surely I'm making stuff up because I work in this field and I just, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. So I mean, I remember how like difficult that was, even in my position of someone who you would think would accept that. So um, when I talk to families who are in that like space, I'm just, like, I try to kind of really stress there's no harm in um, in trying some things that will teach some skills. Where so can can we and instead of kind of coming at it like they're engaging in this like we might say they're doing this in the classroom to meet a need, and we want to come up with a plan to help them meet that need differently, maybe even just reframing how you say it, and even taking the word behavior out of it might help sell it a little bit as part of it's just part of the learning environment, learning how to be in a classroom. um, and but yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I mean, it's hard for families to sometimes even admit that they need to work with a behavior professional. So I'm coming in sometimes and really having to sell what I do too. And I really come just like, hey, you're the expert. I'm just here to help. We're working on this behavior serves a purpose, it meets a need, and we're going to just try some different things that might help them have better days and be you know be able to access education. um, I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question very well because I know how hard that is to sell. I'm going to just come at it from that there's no harm in trying this approach, and it's not. I think the other thing that I say too is, you want your kid to be ready for kindergarten, in kindergarten. And the other thing that I say too is like, your kid is in early intervention. When they start kindergarten, they have the opportunity to really have more skills than their peers. If we can really, put a lot of, work into this, and they're going to be more ready for kindergarten if we can focus on this.
Oh, and that sounds like the alternative wording and focusing on the classroom behavior rather than the child's behavior is helpful. So learning experience. So it sounds like you did answer the question, Steph.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I know sometimes I can't see you all, so it's hard to.
Yeah, for sure. So do we have any other questions? Those are great questions that are coming through. Maybe give another minute for anybody else to put any other questions in the chat. I love hearing your experience, Stephanie, like in specific situations, like the way you word things or the kind of even just rehashing what happened, how something comes to light that you didn't even realize, like, oh my gosh, I did reinforce that, or oh my goodness, I did, like with the music situation, like, well, I want him to ask. It's like, oh my goodness, he did ask, So when you're in it all the time in that situation, it's hard to sometimes slow down and see all those steps of what happens in what order and what leads to what. So it's really helpful to see like that tool where you kind of are walking through each step.
One of the I'm going to go over this in next week's training, show an example of it, but one of my favorite tools that I use is just it's a routine day assessment. And I'm just like, all right, from from the start of the day to the end of the day, let's walk through the general typical routine. It doesn't have to be the best day or the worst day. In any environment you can do this, from when you arrive to when you leave. And then where are what are the support needs and difficulties, and what's working in that routine. So if the arrival routine is flowing, there's no problems there, we're good. But if it's that transition to the first thing on the schedule, that's where we might have to put more support. So looking for those islands where we need to put more support, and then what clues do we get from what's working. So there's parts of the day where things are flowing just fine. What's happening during that time that can give us some clues for the times that are a little bit more difficult. And I do that with families quite a bit. And one of the things that families are noticing when they do that is all the eggshells that they walk on constantly that they don't realize. And so I'm just like, so, you sound like, what are you doing all day long to prevent this behavior from happening? And they are working, like, they don't even realize that they're working so hard to prevent this behavior until I bring it into the light for them. And then I'm like, so now what you're going to do is you're going to keep doing what you're doing, but now it's a strategy. They're just like, whoa, so just bringing that into their awareness and like, you're already doing what you need to do, but it's stressing you out because you're walking on eggshells. Now you're going to do it intentionally, and you're going to do it in other parts of the day too. And then eggshells are opportunities. So if you're walking on eggshells to prevent your child from escalating around a transition, let's put some work into that transition and see what supports we need. And the other thing I tell families too is I'm just like, don't plan your whole day. Like, let's just work on one part of your day. Let's get really, really good at this transition from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And let's become experts at that. And then it's like I give them permission to like just slow down and just do one thing, and it's just very relaxing for them. And then when I check in, I'm like, how is 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock going? They're like, that's going really good. And I've started doing, like, they have already started doing something else in another part of the day using the tools that we've built for 1 hour of the day. So I want to talk about that next week though. Preview.
That's awesome. You can't wait.
Do you want to run through the pathway if we got no volunteers, Callie?
Yeah.
All right. What's your challenging behavior?
Challenging behaviir. So my daughter, you what?
What does it look like? If I was there, what would I see?
What would you see? You would see a struggle to transition from free play time to doing something that a non-preferred activity or non-preferred behavior or non-preferred thing. So the example the other night was, she's finished all her school stuff for the day. She's done all the things she needs to do. So she gets this block of time that's kind of unstructured. She shuts the door to the media room. She can dance to whatever songs she wants. She talks to her imaginary friend. She gets to be in her world. But then the transition to getting her to come, okay, calling everybody down for dinner. Like, we have to ask her 5 times. Then we have to actually physically go up, open the door. And then she doesn't want to come in, and it turns into something she doesn't want to do. Or bedtime, transitioning. Okay, it's time to be done dancing. We have 5 minutes left, and then we go to get her at 5 minutes, and she doesn't want to be done dancing. And so it's like transitions to bedtime or stopping dancing. Anything that's stopping dancing.
Okay. So, all right. So sorry, my screen froze up there for a second, so I couldn't type anything. So, okay, struggle. When I see a struggle, what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What does it look like?
Well, first it's ignoring the request. So we'll say, me Grace, it's 5 minutes left, or me Grace, it's almost time to come down, and it's like she doesn't respond. She just kind of keeps the door shut and stays in there. So then it's the next step of the struggle is, me Grace, I asked you to come downstairs. It's time to come downstairs. It's time to start getting ready for bed. And then it's going in there and physically having to tell her it's time, and then she doesn't do it. So then it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to pause your music because you're not listening. So it's kind of like it starts as a request and then it moves to a demand.
Okay, so she's ignoring, so we're having to repeat that transition request. So actually that should go over here.
And multiple times. It's not usually just we have to ask, it's like we've had to ask like 3 or 4. The other day, Justin, I think asked her 3 or 4 different times before we finally were like, had to go upstairs, open the door, pause the music, get your attention,
Okay. So then when you get her, so you've physically gone to her, you've gotten her attention. Is that help with that transition, or is she keep going?
No, so then she's, no, stupid daddy, no, touch my phone, my music. Don't touch my, she gets mad that someone's interjecting. No, stupid daddy.
No, stupid daddy. And then she
and that's disrespectful and mean. So then you're like, okay, well now you're being rude, when we're just asking you to come join for dinner or to start getting ready for bedtime.
Okay. All right. So so she loves dancing.
Oh.
So there's an underlying condition. Tell me about her, like, as far as communication, like, how is her communication?
Communication's good, especially for the most part, especially with like familiar people. So with me, with Justin, with her brothers, generally we can understand what she's saying. There's occasional times where like, what was that, Mia? And she gets frustrated. And it's like, no, honey, I'm trying to understand. Will you please say that one more time, or show me what you mean? Or can you say it a different way? We've got like our little things we go through to repair a communication breakdown. But in general, especially within our family, which is where these behaviors would normally happen, we generally understand most of what she's saying.
And how old is she again?
11.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
11-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably getting some hormones or something. I don't know. There's probably a lot of factors.
Right. You know where I was going with that.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I've already talked to the doctor about it.
Okay, so the when it's most likely to happen is at bedtime, transitions from music. When are some other, like, if I were to come over and I wanted to see this behavior, when would I come over?
Well, we don't do it anymore because we realized it was a trigger, but a lot of times it was if she got to do those free choice things before a non-preferred activity. So like on days where she didn't have a class meeting or something in the middle of the day, but then she had speech at 2, we would find a challenge to get back into a non-preferred activity. So so we're not doing that as much anymore, but we kind of try to do all of our responsibilities, our things first, and we don't have our free time until we're done with our responsibilities for the day. So then she can just enjoy it for the 2 hours, and it's, not like the on and off, on and off, on and off. Because we found that the transitions are really hard. Like it's actually harder to give her a break and then re-engage. Break and re-engage doesn't really work for her. It's actually easier to just get it done than starting and stopping work.
So, and as you can see, I'm putting this in the proactive, so you're already giving choices. You're already like, okay, let's do non-preferred before free time. So you're already doing some great proactive and preventative stuff. But we would like to get the skill of, hey, you can transition without all this, right? So, right. So we value that. So figuring out what some skills.
Well, there's sometimes where it's just things you don't have a choice about, which is the challenge for us. Is it's like you don't always, like the other challenging thing, which is a different situation right now, is going to school, going to in-person instruction. She doesn't want to go to school. She wants to stay home and play. And it's like, that's not a choice. Like when school's in session, we go to school every day and we have our routine, and she has her backpack in her, like we're in a routine, and it's not a challenging behavior. But because we're not in school every day and it's a lot of time at home and it's not consistent, it's now not a preferred activity. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just with the music, but that's an example of a time.
Okay. So the routine is off in general, and as much as you would like it. I know you're a very structured person. So if I know, I'm sure, like, so if the routine is off, it must really be off, because I know like I know you're probably trying to.
It's irreparably off. Like I can't fix that school's closed. Yeah.
So the trigger is, it's really that. So it's what happens before we see the struggle, which is really that request to transition.
Well, yeah, and it seems like the trigger is like transitioning control. Like she doesn't want anybody else to be in control of her time and what she's doing. It's when somebody else is trying to control what she's doing or where she's going or how like she doesn't want to be controlled, which I understand. But I'm like, you're 11 and you need to brush your teeth, like for bed, or you have to go to school. That's your job when you're 11. So I think some of it is just, it triggers her when she doesn't get to be in control of her time.
So, is she like, I got this, and like leave me alone? Like, is she really wanting to be independent? Like, and
Oh yeah.
okay, so that's awesome.
It
Which I
is,
know I
but it's
said that
also
earlier. That's really challenging, but it's also like great because we can, like, she's motivated to be independent. So if we can give her like kind of that path towards independence,
right.
she might be receptive to that. Okay, so the triggers are is if it's, you know, anything that isn't her idea,
Yeah.
yeah,
Any, yeah.
or
Whatever.
any request that is not her plan.
Yep. Same with family movie time. Yeah. Like if it's a movie she doesn't want to watch, it's her, it's not as big of a behavior, but yeah, it just seems to be when she's not in control or when she's not getting to choose.
Okay. So then, okay, so we have, so as far as a response to the behavior, you guys are repeating, you're going to her, she's getting, you know, so that behavior chain that I talked about before too is it starts with ignoring, it moves to no stupid daddy, you know, don't touch my things, that's mine, you know. Um, and I mean, is it how much like time, like what are you how are you transitioning her? What are you doing to finally get her to transition?
Well, we try to warn, like I give her a heads up, like, okay, in 5 minutes, we're doing this. You get 5 more minutes, or okay. She's like, well, no, I'm dancing. I'm like, okay, you can finish this song and then pick one more song, and then we're gonna do this. So that's kind of usually the progression. Is like, all right, you can finish this song or finish this dance routine. A lot of times she's practicing a recital, like a routine. So it's like, okay, you can finish the one you're doing, and then I need you to do this. So that's usually kind of the pathway. That just isn't seeming to work as much anymore as it used to.
And does that work?
It used to. It
Okay.
doesn't work as much anymore. Sometimes it does. Occasionally it's like, okay, and she's, complies. But lately it seems to be a little bit more like there's never a good time to stop. She'll dance till midnight if I let her dance till midnight,
Okay.
There's
So
never going to be.
so are you having to kind of get mean mommy? Like,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, like this
Not,
is
yeah, you'll
turning
have to take away your
into
phone.
bed right now or else?
Well, yeah, or like, okay, well, you're not listening or when we're asking you to turn the music off. So I don't want to have to take away your phone, but we're going to have to take a break from the music if you're not going to listen when we ask
Okay.
you, or whatever. Oh, no, it's my phone. We're like, right, we gave you that phone as a gift, but you still have to obey mom and dad when we're asking you to do something. I don't like to threaten or to take away things,
Oh
but
no, but it's a tool that you have to use right now, right? Like I said, so I'm not going to take your tool away right now.
right now.
You know, so that's, you know, hey, no, I get it. You know, that's why I said, right, do you have to be a mean mommy? Because sometimes
Yeah.
you do. Okay, so if I'm kind of, again, we're making our best guess about the need met. And so I was noticed, like, so giving her more time with structure. So information,
Mm-hmm.
I think was part of, you know, was helpful, but maybe not the need met by the behavior, but that's a good clue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does. I mean, I think you have, you know, she wants independence and control. She doesn't want to be told what to do. Like, so she's exerting her independence. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
does that feel?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, this is going to be a tough one. It's a good one. Making me use my brain. Okay. So okay, so the step 2, what we would like her to do is to maybe, do you like ask for more time, or I mean, what would, I mean, we want her, like, you want her to transition.
I wanted to transition, somewhat quickly. I understand there needing to be some lead up or, oh, can I have 5 more minutes and then do that? But at some point, like we do need to go to bed. So yeah, the eventual goal would be a reasonable transition time, not like a 20-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute thing every time that's like all of our story time for bedtime. We're now starting bedtime at 7 instead of 6:40. That's later than we need to be starting or whatever.
So we want her to, you know, as far as I mean, it's a replacement behavior that still meets that need, which is that she's going to transition within a reasonable amount of time, but she still feels in control.
Mm-hmm.
So the step 1 to get there. So what I would like to think of is something that happens at that first ask, a skill that Like I'm almost thinking that instead of calling up, you might need to just go to her
Mm-hmm.
first, instead of it getting to going to her.
Right.
And then, so you want her to transition within a reasonable amount of time, and she wants to be in control. So what if you go to her and say, okay, like you're give her the information here. These are, first, next, then, and or first and then too, like, and I like, as far as, like if, as far as processing, if you're just like, okay, first this, then this, is she like, got it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Even she'll even do first, next, then, she can do multiple steps. Like, okay,
perfect.
first I'm doing tutoring, then I'm seeing Candace, then she can
Okay.
go through steps.
Do you think that like okay, if you say it and then leave the room, does it leave her awareness, or does she
Yeah.
remember it and then she's
It depends on how spicy she's feeling, but yeah, yeah. Usually it's like sometimes I'll hear the music stop and she'll come out, I'll hear the door open and I'll go, Mia, thank you for turning your music off. But and she, okay, welcome, mom. There's times where she will, but if she really is in the zone of whatever she's doing, sometimes it's like, yeah. So it kind of depends. It's not consistent.
So what I'm thinking is going, going to her, and with the the skill is that we want her to say, I want more time. And because you're already kind of giving her that choice, but I think giving her the control over that
Mhm.
might help with the control piece, where you're just like,
Instead of me
okay,
saying, you're saying, instead of me saying, okay, one more song and then you're done, or saying like initiating a different conversation, like,
have her tell you, like,
so Mia, it's almost time for bed. Like, are you ready to get ready for bed? Like, ask a question, you mean? Like,
I might say, how many songs until bed,
okay,
you know
something
so
like that.
so
That's
she's,
good.
give, like, so it's give, so you're kind of giving her some control. But what I want it to like become a skill too, where she's like able to say, mom, can I want more time, you know
Mhm.
so we're so you might go to her and say, would you like, first, next, then, do you want to, do you want to come downstairs now, or do you need more time? And then when she's going to say more time, so you're going to reinforce that, just like, oh, thank you so much for asking for more time. You can always say, I need more time. So that's a skill you're getting online is, I need more time.
Okay.
And again, I like when I say use your, like, like I, in my example of use your words, what are the words? Like, let's teach the words that we want
Right.
her to say. So it's really clear for anybody who, everybody in the family. And then, but again, reasonable is what we're teaching though, right?
Right.
So, okay, how, do you, and then say, do you want, and then give the choice. Well, I want to, like, I think, say, how many more songs until, how much more time until, and then if she's like 500, you'd be like, silly,
Yeah.
try again, you can make it fun,
Yeah.
like, but have her be the one that gives you the time. And then, and I think front loading that with, hey, I know that that phone is, important to you, and music is important to you. So we're going to work together on you being able to have what you want, but also, like,
Right.
so kind of get her on board with seeing. So you're not in that position to be like, I'm going to have to take your phone if you don't
Right.
knock it off. Like, you're kind of, I mean, again, I'm not going to take that out of your toolkit, right? But
I like it not to get there.
getting to that point where, you can be like, hey, you are being so responsible with your phone. So you're able to kind of help her to see that independence is wrapped up with less, where I control you less when you just work with me, kid.
Yeah, totally. That's great. I love that. That's awesome.
So there, yeah. And the response to, I know we're right at that time, so we're almost done. The response to the behavior is you're gonna, reinforce, her being in control. But it's control that you're orchestrating. And reinforce asking for more time. And then when you move into that step 2, when like she might getting to that point where she says, I need more time, you go, you know what? I know that that's more important. I love how you asked that. Right now, there isn't more time. But you know that I usually give you more time when I can, right?
Yeah.
High five, woo, let's go. So you've built some bargaining power.
Yeah.
Because you've given so much control away that when you can't, she'd be like, she's got me. She's right. She does say, give me lots of control.
Perfect. I love
Awesome.
it. Thank you
You're welcome.
for walking through that. Hey, you're gonna have to send me that.
I will do just that. Right after.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Stephanie, if you could stop sharing screen for just a minute
yeah.
so I can show the end slide. We have a couple of things announcements I wanted to share really quick before we finished up today. So let me pull up my slideshow really quick and go to our little announcement page. So CODSN, we are an Oregon Health Authority community-based organization. So we are helping with providing wraparound services for those impacted by COVID in quarantine and isolation. So we're helping with financial assistance, rent, mortgage, lots of different supports. So if that's something that would be benefit to you or someone you know, you can always contact us and we can get the paperwork started to help with that. We also have some grants or the OHA COVID-19 CARES grant. And so what this allows us to do is to cover up to $250 per person of financial assistance for deductibles or copays not covered by insurance for mental and or behavioral health visits. There is a deadline on this funding, so we only have it through the end of December. So we really want to get this into the hands of people who need it. So if you know families or if you know people that you do not have to have a disability to access this funding. This is for anyone in the 7 counties that we serve that are listed on the flyer. So be sure to find that on our website or reach out. We can get you that information. We also have a couple trainings next week, actually 3 days in a row of different trainings. So we have a technology training on Tuesday the 8th at noon with Amanda Wallace, and then 2 of our staff parents, Jenny and Steph, a different Stephanie. So that's going to be great. You can register for that on our website. We also have a building resilience while avoiding burnout training coming up we have a whole group of panelists. It's really, really helpful. This is part of a series. So we did the first one last month and it was really amazing. And then this one is the last behavior series training, and it's person-centered behavior support strategies on the 10th. So again, with Stephanie Hunter leading us through that. Thank you so much for doing that today, Stephanie. We so appreciate your expertise and your knowledge helping us through that. So there'll be another section of similar behavior information coming on the 10th if you want to register for that. And thank you for joining us today. We're so glad you guys were all able to log on and be with us. And we so appreciate you being here and learning all this information. Please make sure you fill out the survey when you exit the webinar. It will give you the link to fill out the survey, and it also will come via email. And then once we've gotten those, we will go ahead and draw someone's name for this self-care kit. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time to be with us and share. And we look forward to connecting soon. All right. Bye, everyone.